and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Rachel Nelson from UC Santa Cruz Institute of the Arts and Sciences, and I'm really excited that Edgar Heap of Birds will be speaking today. Edgar Heap of Birds almost needs no introduction and has already popped up onto our screen, but as we all know, he's a world-renowned artist working in multidisciplinary forms of public art messages, large-scale drawings, acrylic paintings, prints, works in glass, and more. Heap of Birds' artistic creations and efforts as an advocate for indigenous communities worldwide are focused first upon social justice and then the personal freedom to live within the tribal circle as an expressive individual. It's truly a thrill to have him here with us to tell us more about his art practice and commitments. It's also gratifying in that this is a return. We are bringing Heap of Birds back to UC Santa Cruz, if virtually, and building on a deep history he has with this campus. The Mary Porter Cezanne Art Gallery held an exhibition of his works back in 1992, and since he's been a repeat visitor. Now, 20 years later, we're again currently showing his work. His amazing print piece, Not Your Coyote Stories, features prominently in Strange Weather from the collection of Jordan D. Schnitzer and his family foundation, now in view at UC Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History. This exhibition is a collaboration between us and the MA, and if you haven't seen it, it's open until August and free for UC Santa Cruz students, faculty, and staff, as well as MA members. We do hope you check it out. I have to say, getting to exhibit Heap of Birds' work is an honor for us. He's exhibited at major institutions and exhibitions all over the world, including the Museum of Modern Art, New York, Whitney Museum of American Art, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Cheyenne and Arapaho Nations Reservation in Oklahoma, the National Gallery of Canada, Documenta and Castle, and Venice Biennale, just to name a few. His generosity in continuing to foster a connection with our community in Santa Cruz has left me really, really appreciative. And I thank everybody, of course, at the MA as well for making this possible. So we'll turn over to Edgar. As we all have heard, he's got a shortened time today because of personal stuff, and we want to give him all support and lift him up in this. But for one more moment of delights about the delights in store, before I turn it over to Edgar, after his talk, we'll be joined by the amazing Jennifer Gonzalez, Professor of History of Art and Visual Culture and co-curator of Strange Weather, for a conversation. So I'll turn it over to you, Edgar, and Jennifer, and I will see you later.
Well, thanks for the great introduction, very friendly introduction. And can we have the first slide, please? We have that up. I guess I'll see that. Okay, great. I'm here in Oklahoma. I'm in Western Oklahoma, well, Central Oklahoma, but I'm going to go out to the western part here in an hour and a half or so. Shonarapo Nation. So we're looking west, and I want to talk about the earth and the tribe and my art activities, and give you some perspective on where I am and how important the community is. That's looking west on the prairie, looking to the sunset, west from Oklahoma City, out toward the reservation, that first slide. And the horizon is very important. A lot of the artwork that we do, the very flatness of the artwork, especially, is based on that view looking to the sunset. Okay, next, please. I want to dedicate this talk to indigenous women. That's my grandmother, Hoetzio, Lightning Woman, Heap of Birds, and her daughter, Dorothy. They both passed now, but that legacy of my grandmother is very important to me, and I want to honor her today. Okay, next, please. This is the family, the Heap of Birds family. My grandmother was in the Redbird family, but she married the young boy on the far left, Guy Heap of Birds, and then Grace Big Bear in the center, the female leader of the family, and then Black Wolf Heap of Birds with a pipe. He's the leader of the Elk Warrior Society, which I'm one of the leaders now, and his father was Many Magpies, one of the four principal chiefs of the Cheyenne Nation, who was in prisoner of war in Florida. Okay, next, please. I've been really gifted to have mentors, artists, both native and non-native. This is a sculpture by Black Bear Boson, a Kiowa Comanche artist. Next, please. He was in Wichita, Kansas when I was growing up. He did his career there, and this is Black Bear painting. And so it's very important to me to have an artist to look up to, just an artist practicing, the field of art. And I was very happy to have Black Bear serve that role. Okay, next, please. And Prairie Fire is one of his main paintings he created in his life. This is a collection of the Philbrook Art Center in Tulsa. And he tries to depict the union of the fire, the animals, and the people together, more like a beautiful concert rather than a dangerous force, the fire and the prairie. Okay, next, please. Along with that mentorship, I had a legacy certainly of repression and oppression. Colonel Custer came and massacred the tribe in the 1800s in Western Oklahoma, a place called Cheyenne. Massacre called the Washita Massacre. After that massacre, Heap of Birds, one of the four principal chiefs, and also a Warrior Society member, his name was Hock, Little Chief, which I have the same name. They were a group sent to prison as prisoners of war to Florida. Here's their photograph as they were in prison in St. Augustine, Florida. Okay, next, please. And that kind of a very, very dangerous repression continues to kind of to stomp on the communities from the ruling class of America. These are the prisoners of war in Camp X-Ray, Guantanamo Bay, and they have the same status, having no charges, having no judges, having no juries, as we suffered as prisoners of war after Colonel Custer. So this is at Guantanamo Bay. Okay, next, please. While they were in prison, they made artwork, the Cheyenne prisoners, and this is a painting by Bear's Heart, and a very expressive, bold painting to paint the army while you're incarcerated by the army. These are soldiers and horses and guns launching themselves against the prairie across America. Okay, next, please. So that legacy has been very strong for me. I researched it, I live it. I'm a Warrior Society member now. I'm an instructor in the ceremonies. And I go back to Heap of Birds, Bear Shield, Mccabe, Medicine Water, Longback, Hailstone, all these warriors who were in prison, POWs in Florida, coming out of Western Oklahoma before it was the state of Oklahoma. And so the names are really indicative of the power that was launched against the tribe, and that English became the rule of law, and they changed some of our names. So I studied the names and presented them in this 8 by 8 foot painting when I was young, after grad school in Tyler in Philadelphia. Okay, next, please. I've been to Fort Marion. I participated in projects there, and I honor the warriors who were there. There are also warriors that died there. I carry the ceremonial pipe there, and I shut the fort down for a period of time and gave prayers to the warriors that were lost there. And this is where they lived, on top of this roof. And two of the game ranger kind of people, they were a little uncomfortable, but we had to make the prayers for those warriors in St. Augustine, Florida. Okay, next, please. For my MFA show at Tyler School of Art, I didn't have any Cheyenne people to come to attend, so far away from where I was living in Philly. So I took it upon myself to launch their names, present their names. So Many Magpies was Chief Many Magpies. Howling Crane was my grandmother's grandfather. So I put in about 4 or 5 Cheyenne names in the gallery along with my MFA work. And it launched kind of a lot of expression of language into my practice. This is 1979. Okay, thanks. Next, please. I returned home to Oklahoma in the early 80s. I was living in Philadelphia. I was showing in New York City, but I had to come back and learn much, much more. And so I've been home in Oklahoma since the 80s. And I've spent that time, I think, very, very, very well in learning with the Cheyenne traditions and becoming a leader from that Red Earth. Okay, next, please. But I didn't stay here. I mean, that's not the way, it's not a didactic relationship. I moved back and forth, visiting New York, visiting Europe, visiting Asia, Australia, Africa. This is a piece I did with other artists in New York City in '82. It was called Messages to the Public Art Fund, Times Square. The only billboard at Times Square in '82 was this one here. And Keith Haring, Barbara Kruger, Jenny Holzer, Hans Hocke, Billy Sullivan, Jane Dixon, all these great artists, David Hammonds. We all had a month apiece on this billboard. And I proclaimed that Tatistas Chista said the spider, there's 10 different cells. You can look this up on the internet, but there's 10 different cells of language on my billboard message, which proclaims that the white man's a spider in the Cheyenne language. And that deals with what the white man did on the prairie, the fences, the reservations, the capturing, and so on. So that was done in '82. Okay, next, please. This is a more contemporary, probably 2005, I believe. This was done in Atlanta. And I do site-specific works around the world. And I did these signs as no parking signs, which kind of indicated that your parking time is up, America, you need to move along. And I had a show at PS1 MoMA, and we put these up, Trail of Tears. And now they're showing in Tulsa on Muskogee land, which is actually now called Tulsa, but it's Muskogee land. Okay, next, please. And that's the banner I have up right now. Current show at Oklahoma #1 artist run space, and there's 3 Native artists exhibiting, and they have a nice website. You can check that out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The next, please. That kind of awareness came from 1988 in terms of Native hosts, and I flipped the word around backwards. Native New York. Today your host is Mohawk, and I was coming to New York as a visitor, as I do often find myself visiting other tribal lands, and so therefore I find myself being hosted by the Mohawk people, and I turn New York around backwards to look at their past differently, as I do Tulsa today. So that's the first sign we did with Native hosts in '88 in City Hall Park in New York. Okay, next, please. I work with students. I work with different communities on universities and also reservations. This is in Salt Lake City, and we work with students who told me that there was no Ute Nation. The Ute Nation is a misspelling or a misnomer. The real name is Nuchi. So I put this up at the Student Association, American Indian Student Association, on the campus of Salt Lake City. I think it's University of Utah, Salt Lake City. Okay, next, please. This is at Crystal Bridges, and Arkansas is backwards. Look at their past differently. And I think there are 7 panels there at Crystal Bridges. This word at the bottom is a Cheyenne word, which is talking to all the tribes together, and that they're all the hosts in a sense of this continent. Okay, next, please. And I was really happy and privileged to go work in the Virgin Islands. And I go there often. I paint there as well. And I have friends, artists there. And we did a series of panels for the Taino and other tribal communities in the Caribbean who are often forgotten. We put them up for the cruise ship passengers to come and see. Okay, next, please. While I was there for African Independence Day on a recent visit about 4 years ago. And I was asked to speak at the state legislature hall, which I did with these really great leaders of the community and artists in St. Thomas. I'll be back in St. Thomas, I think, in March. Okay, next, please. I also work with California Native tribes. This is Tongva. This is Julia Bagani, who has passed on, but she was my leader in research, and she identified 20 sacred sites in Los Angeles. And so this is a mountain near Pitzer College, the word jolt. And we created 20 panels and put them all over campus. And there were 4 that were collected by the University of Pitzer College that were there up permanently now. And Julia sang songs there that day. It was wonderful. So I support other tribes as I come to town to honor Native life. Okay, next, please. I had a great experience in Alaska and Anchorage, and I worked with the Anchorage Museum and had, I think, 24 tribal nations within Alaska, Athabascan being one of them. There in the early winter or late summer, the leaves were turning in August. Okay, next, please. and had a wonderful, wonderful time encountering the glaciers on the Sound, about 2 hours south of Anchorage, and was able to bring this ice on board of the boat and to get a blessing from that ancient water, which was just spectacular to connect with that very, very old water that turned to ice. Okay, next, please. I've also worked in Africa. I work with colleagues in South Africa and Zimbabwe. So my practice has many, many facets. And one of them, of course, is to engage tribal communities globally and to collaborate with those communities. And if I can bring forward their work into a more international realm, I do so. In Australia, I did that. And I did that also in Africa. And so this is the Zimbabwean eagle on the left and the shiny eagle on the right. And I thought if they could speak together, there'd be less racism. There is some racism between African American and Native American communities. And so I wanted to join them together as eagles. And so next slide, please. I did encounter an eagle in Botswana, and it was a great experience for me to learn there were eagles there and if they could talk together. So we have Thimbegosi Goniwe on the right from Cape Town Township, myself on the left, and Everett Tulloch Whedon in the center, who might be called a Black Indian in Narragansett community, but there's been a lot of intermarriage and a lot of linkage from oppression of the African slaves that came, and also the tribal people that were dominated by the British and the American governments. And so we worked together and we made a project called Eagle Speak. We made it in Rhode Island and also in Cape Town, South Africa. Okay, next, please. Back home, Oklahoma, I've been a professor at University of Oklahoma for 30 years. I'm retired from teaching, which I'm very happy about, but I did do a series of sign panels for every Native professor on campus and put them up at the Jacobson House in Norman, Oklahoma. And this is the Sooners being run back the other direction. And the way they flip their name around, that's the mascot name of the university. And Cheyenne, my tribe. Okay, next, please. I also work with community members. These are elders, about 250 elders in Watonga, Oklahoma. And we did medicine wheel paintings, had a wonderful day together. My mother and my sister were there. They had drum, they had song, we had food. We made 250 paintings. A really wonderful day in Watonga. And I'll be working with tribal high school students in June in Concho, Oklahoma. Okay, next, please. And again, back in Oklahoma, the juniper trees are so powerful for me. I lived for 10 years on the reservation proper. I'm heading out there tonight. And these trees were instrumental in my vision of my painting series called neuf series, N-E-U-F, to do something 4 times in the Cheyenne language. Okay, next, please. And here are some of the neuf paintings on a barn. And actually it's in Maine, on Bar Harbor, Maine, but I painted in Maine with the help of Kippy Stroud, a great philanthropic person who brought me to Maine, my family and other artists. And I really like the water and I like the trees. And so those are some of the paintings I created with the moving shapes that came out of the canyon of Oklahoma. Okay, next, please. And these are more recent. Those are probably like 95. These are from 2010 or 12. And the neuf series with the green, blue colors of renewal. I created 4 of these paintings. They're about 30 by 40 inches. Okay, next, please. And now, of course, since 95 or 98, I've been in the tropics a lot. I've been in the Great Barrier Reef, the Caribbean, Gulf of Thailand, Samoa, Hawaii, many, many times. And so the coral and the fish, the buoyancy, all those kinds of expressions are very great for me, and they become part of the painting language in a very subliminal way. Okay, next, please. And that's the volcano in Bali. We've worked in Java, also Sumatra, and Bali and Lombok, and that's the volcano in the clouds. I swim in that water, and it gives me such a lift to be in the water with the fish and the coral and those seas. Okay, next, please. And that's more of the neuf series from that era of being in Bali as well. Next, please. I'm painting a lot now on the lanai. I just returned from Mazatlan, Mexico, the west coast of Mexico, and I'll be in Hawaii in about 2 weeks. I've worked there previously. This is in Oahu, and I'm making these wood panel paintings, and I really enjoy making these panels and taking my paint with me and painting on the lands of all these islands. Next, please. Sydney, Australia. I've also collaborated, as I said, with Australian artists, Aboriginal artists. And so there's a museum right behind this opera house, Circular Quay Institute, Contemporary Art Institute. And we had a major show there with Fiona Foley was my partner to collaborate with this piece there. And it's called Learn a War Cry. Okay, next, please. So we did this actually with fax machine. In 96 or so. And on the left is Fiona Foley's piece, Eora language, Aboriginal language. And it's a message to Captain Cook, milk, honey, oh, you hurt me, set on fire, itchy, a war cry, blood, brave, black. And on the right is my message in Cheyenne, I guess to Colonel Custer in a sense, but Captain Cook as well. Brit ship, steal, hurt, learn, share, commonwealth. And that's in Cheyenne language. So that the door opened up and you walked in the museum and that's what you first saw, that message. Okay, next, please. I made a banner in London. This is by St. Pancras Station or King's Cross, where the Eurostar goes to Belgium. And of course, we have to lay some major blame at the feet of the European nations for the atrocities in this continent. So I listed a low number of native lives lost. And in England, they call you Red Indian. And instead of having, from India, native people are Red Indians. And so I put this up by King's Cross, where the Eurostar travels, about a 30-foot banner in London, England. Okay, next, please. And of course, the Cleveland Billboard, which caused quite a controversy in '96 against the baseball team, which has since now lost their logo. Some of these things I've been working on for many years, and they've come to pass as a more sensitive change for America. And I'm very happy to see that change take place. That was put up in Cleveland and censored, but it was reinstated. Okay, next, please. And back to the land of Oklahoma, the Red Rock. Gary, Oklahoma, west of town, about 6 miles on top of the South Canadian River. And I lived there for 10 years, hunted and gardened and had my dogs and painted and made a studio. And my sons were sort of raised out there, and then we moved after that time frame. Okay, next, please. And I created these drawings there on the canyon on top of the lands there. I made a studio space. It's called American Policy. And it's now in the collection of the Whitney Museum. I think Policy 1, Policy 2, half of this goes to another collector and one half goes to the Whitney. And I also showed it in Northern Ireland, in Derry, with Declan McConaughey. Me and Jimmy Durham had a show there. Okay, next, please. A detail, uterine hats. The massacre at Sand Creek, the militia cut out the uterus of the Cheyenne women and wore them as hat ornaments to dispose of the home of any future Cheyenne children. And I made that drawing from that terrible spirit. Okay, next, please. Then the cover of Art in America, I did that, and a few years back, and I made this monoprint for that expression. We turned America backwards. And so it was really calling out Native artists across the country to not dance for pay, to really be more provocative, more aggressive, more critical of the life here, and not take the money and dance for pay. Okay, next, please. And my printmaker, one of my main printmakers is Michael Mccabe, a Navajo printer in Santa Fe at Fourth Dimension Studios and Fine Art Studios. And here we are working on some smaller monoprints. Next, please. With the plate, we're using plate oil, and I'm writing backwards on a clear plate, inking it up, and making these monoprints. Okay, next, please. And these are done from the series, Genocide Democracy series, and they're 22 by 15. And these are all monoprints, ink on rack paper. Okay, next, please. And they speak for themselves. I do work with some songs, some patriotic songs also. Next, please. And of course, missing and murdered women, Native women, very powerful movement today. I call it Pilgrim's Pride. Okay, next, please. And the Statue of Liberty has its back to all the Indians, all the Native communities. No one seems to understand that. That is asking everyone to come to a place they don't own. Okay, next, please. And that we have the democracy to vote, but of course the natives are spread out across the country and very low population numbers, so never really having any power to elect many people. Next, please. The show at PS1, that's the title of the show, Surviving Active Shooter Custer. And it was up maybe 4 years ago, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, next, please. And Active Shooter, this is the pivotal piece I created, me and Michael in Santa Fe, with the help of Candace Hopkins and Rubica Trieb later helped with PS1 MoMA. And we had this exhibited at Site Santa Fe, the Site Santa Fe Biennale. And it was the first double ghosted print I ever made, with 24 primary prints and 24 ghost prints. And the ghost prints are actually a reflection on how faint the non-native population views Indian people. They rarely see them at all, and they're hard to distinguish in terms of the reality. And that's on the right, and on the left are the primary prints. The first pull, the second pull on the right. Okay, next, please. So these are the primary prints from Surviving Active Shooter Custer, which deals from that perspective of the Sand Creek Massacre as a locator. I mean, the Washita Massacre, excuse me. Okay, next, please. And the ghost prints from Active Shooter Custer. And that county is actually called Custer County. Okay, yeah, let's go to the next one. And this is a piece about health issues. Health of the people's the highest law. And this is now in a collection, I believe, in Europe. And it was shown at PS1 MoMA. So I continue the ghosting. Okay, next, please. And this is Why is Immigration Dictated by Foreigners? This is a newer piece, 48 prints, 24 primary on the left, 24 ghosts on the right, largely about Trump's engagement with the tragedy of immigration a few years back. Okay, next, please. And I did a series from traveling to the Dominican Republic, and I went to Christopher Columbus's residence, his son's residence. And so I did a whole series of 48 prints called Columbus Day. And these are those right off the press in Santa Fe. We hold them up and take a shot as soon as we make a print. So these are 22 by 30. These are full sheets. And that's what I work with now, are full sheets primarily. Okay, next, please. And these are all primary prints from Columbus Day. Okay, next, please. And so I visited the home, and of course I was living in the DR, and had a good picture of what the tragedy is there. Okay, next, please. And that was the governor, Diego, son of Columbus. Next, please. And of course, they would cut your hands off if you didn't find enough gold for the Spanish. Next, please. And our thing is, of course, is that we fought the Buffalo soldiers in Oklahoma, Indian Territory, and they could have come from the Caribbean, and they ended up being sort of mercenaries. You know, they had no other choice in the sense to come and work in America. Black soldiers who were in the cavalry in the prairie. Okay, next, please. And Taino, Arawak, Carib, the tribes that we honor with native host sign. So we also talked about their tragic life with the Spanish and the brutality. Next, please. And one of the other works from Columbus Day. And I've been in Spain, of course. I had a show in Valencia and also visited Madrid. And so I back it the other way too. I go back to Europe to research as well. Okay, next, please. And I'm excited about this. This is brand new work, and Do Not Dance for Pay, of course, coming out of the Art in America cover. And that's a drawing I made with ink on paper. And so we've been working now with embossing on a magnesium plate. And of course, I'm very involved with the technique of art. I mean, the different facilities, the different tools. So I keep progressing in that way as well. Next, please. There's the plate, magnesium. And these are 15 by 22. And I just finished these in LA about a month ago. Okay, next, please. So we did this wonderful embossing on this tremendous, it's not really called paper, it's called board, but it's about, I don't know, like a 3/8 of an inch thick. And so it actually pushes up the paper and makes this raised surface. And I made an installation with printing with it too. We did experimental techniques to color the regular paper, but not this is embossing paper though, but I made a cream color and a white embossed. This is an addition of about 20 of each color. And that's the paper next to it on the left, the thick paper. Okay, next, please. And here's the installation. It's called Was Told 27 Times. And again, it's harkens back to pleading with Native artists to not dance for pay, do not overproduce, do not make works that don't matter, do not decorate the world, do not become tourism. Try to really speak about the tough conditions that we face, and also go back and find your own tribal leadership and join it and make ceremonial life part of your life. And so this is a series of 27 prints, all one of a kind monoprints from that same plate, using experimental techniques to get the surface. And we also printed the back color independently. Next, please. And that's an example of kind of the experimental, like a cloud blowing over the text or smoke. I'm really excited about this, and I'm going to do another series in Santa Fe probably in the fall. I've got another set of words. This time I'm working with my large piece called Tribal Lives Matter, which is a list of about 200 massacres in America, and I've already finished that large installation. But I want to take one of those pieces and make one of these kind of prints and do it a series of times and make an installation. Okay, next, please. This is a piece I just shipped today to Canada, to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and it's called Water is Your Only Medicine. And it's a 24 primary, 24 ghosts, about 30 feet when you put them both together. And it all deals with how sacred water is and the beautiful blues that we had in the ink, all done in Santa Fe and shipped off today to Saskatoon for a new exhibit there. Okay, next, please. And there's the ghost. So you see how different, the feeling is. And again, it's how the non-native world sees us, just barely in some cases, just barely at all. And we want to change that with what we make. Okay, next, please. And this is, I guess, my anthem in a sense, that native natives survive in spite of the empire. And we do that in a series of ways, but one is with family, one is with ceremony. And I think we have to get ahead of any kind of business mentality or public marketing mentality. I mean, you have to live your art and live with your community and help the people on the community itself. Next, please. And I stand with the family, my wife, Shanna Heap of Birds, who is a PhD from Middlesex University, art critic, Navajo citizen, our daughter, Desba, Lightning Woman. Heap of Birds, named after the first lady I showed you, my grandmother, Hoitzio, and myself. My daughter just celebrated her 13th birthday 2 days ago. So the family is where we stand, and the community. And the next slide, please. And within the ceremony, the sage, the offerings, and the summer solstice, the summer earth renewal, which we're going to move into in about a month from now. And that's what we'll be involved with. And that's where the native art should be sourced from, is the real earth and the real ceremonial ways. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That was fascinating and so great to see such a large body of your work. And Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me. I know everybody here probably knows who Jennifer Gonzalez is, but her reputation precedes her. But of course, one of the things that she is to me is she worked with me to curate the exhibition that we're featuring your work. So thanks, Jennifer, for being here. Do you want to start off with questions?
Yes, it's such a pleasure to be here and such a wonderful talk. Thank you so much, Edgar. I've been a fan of your work and taught your work for many years, and I'm really interested. I know you have just a few minutes with us, and I'd really love to talk right after your talk, thinking about this question about being drawn in your early work to landscape, the horizon, the Oklahoma sky, and you also talked in an interview with Art in America about how Westerners saw your work being related to the Bauhaus, but really it was related because of its kind of minimal linear way, right? And then, but actually it really being tied to the land. And many of your works respond to locations, to plants, to ecosystems. And I wonder if you can say more about what it means to be in conversation, both with artistic traditions and precedents, as well as natural environments, because I see your work really beautifully operating in those two registers at the same time. And then is that maybe a question of being a kind of medicine? So that's my first question, sort of two-part question.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah, I think certainly the earth and the ecosystems are the medicine. That's the main medicine. And we're committed to that. And I'm just very, very privileged to have spent my time the last 30 years kind of immersed in that way, where I have colleagues that can come and bless you, can heal your family, heal your house, or we're going to go here to a funeral here in a little bit, and we have to go help some people, and so that's all part of the medicine, and it just is so productive and progressive and helping people. But along with that, of course, like you said, there are the awareness of the technique and the nomenclature, the history of visual art globally. That's wonderful as well. I mean, it all goes together, and I hope I'm a player in that. I hope I'm extending this discussion as a painter and my art practice as well. But of course, it makes all the difference in the world to go to the place. Often my neuf paintings in early stages were thought to be Clifford Still, like. So everyone goes to find it where they think it is until they come to the place. And that's why I go to the sea. That's why I go to see the fish. I mean, I'm not going to watch a PBS special about it. I'm going to go swim with them, and see what that is. And so it's worked out. But it's been hard. It's been a hard life, but it's good that way.
I was just going to say, I loved this slideshow because we were given that shot of the beautiful fishes and the incredible color on the coral and the white fishes and the different colors of turquoise blue. And then when we come to the Not Your Coyote series, or the most recent piece you showed about water, we see those colors come back in, and we see also those colors from the locations where you painted the Neuf series showing up in relation in the Neuf series in that sort of jagged shape of juniper tree. And I feel like a lot of that materiality is showing up very concretely in the work.
Well, thanks. Thank you. Yeah.
So in 2020, you were inducted into the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, which is the highest honor a nation bestows on artists and scholars. So congratulations. I wondered if you'd like to speak about the political significance of this moment and how you see this in terms of your own body of work and the future of your work.
Well, it's been gratifying, and I want to be a leader, I guess, for many communities or helping people. But I don't want to talk too deeply about this, but I do. What I'm looking at now is more of a legacy, and trying to impart like residency programs, gallery programs with whatever sales we have, scholarship projects. I'm kind of focusing, I guess, more on that of what award would I give in my honor or my family's honor, rather than what's been given to me, but what can I do to pinpoint it to where it'll help Native artists. And so I like the balance of the notoriety, but it gives you the wherewithal to actually help other artists in the future, maybe forever. And so I'm very excited about that. And we do have some wealth, things that have been selling. You know, the Tate bought a piece, MoMA bought a piece. And when those kind of things happen, it's a pretty big boost to your to your bank account. But so you want to take the funds and turn it around and give it away to important groups that can help Native art in the future.
I have one more question, Rachel, if that's all right.
Well, I want to say my grandmother told me one thing before. I want to impart this on everybody. She said that when you go on a trip to go visit your relatives or other tribal people, if you can't take something with you, don't go. She said, stay home. She said, so when you go somewhere, you travel, you want to give away. You got to give away. So we're doing that.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I want to come back to the kind of amazing series from the Democracy and Genocide, including Surviving Active Shooter Custer, which is a title that is so resonant with our current dilemma of, I would call it the disease of guns in our contemporary society. And obviously those who are disproportionately the victims of gunfire. And I really like the way you created this historical framework for it, rather than having us feel that it's all new, but in fact, it's part of a longer tradition and history of what we might call white terrorism in the suppression of indigenous communities. And I wonder if you wanted to talk a little bit about the tension between democracy as it's presented by a kind of elite and democracy as we might imagine it actually working. And if you wanted to talk at all about that tension in your in a work or in your own mind about that.
Well, certainly. I mean, that's why I opened with Fort Marion. You know, when we had the massacre, and I was even up in Kansas the other day. I was invited as a professor, at the Wichita State University, because of Black Bear Bosan's 100th anniversary of his birth in Wichita. So I went to talk about his work, but I was encountering the shockers again. The shockers, which are the wheat shock of Kansas. So those little kind of wheat bundles, and kind of this sort of as a neutral, productive, like achievement, But of course, before the shockers came to Kansas and kicked out all the Wichita tribal people, the army came. So the army comes, kills all the Indians or runs them off. Then the farmers come and make a grand kind of industry, and then the university calls themselves the shockers. So I'm going to try to do a public art piece about that. But again, in Oklahoma, you had the Sand Creek Massacre in Colorado, the Washoe Massacre in Oklahoma. You take the leadership, put them in prison in Florida, then you have democracy. So what power do these citizens have to interact with the republic when they're prisoners of war, you know, and so it's remained that way. So again, it's just a misnomer. There's any kind of equality or parity. Even to this day, there's been so much poverty on the reservation, so much dysfunction. Custer's Fort, actually, that they used to restock him, has become a mental health facility in Western Oklahoma, near the massacre site, because so many Cheyenne people have mental health issues or alcoholism, and so they had to make a facility for people, and that's democracy. I mean, that's what we have here. So it's very much a mistaken identity of equality and parity.
One of the things I was thinking about as you were talking about this kind of tension with democracy too is the modality that you use of language, right? The kind of the speech that you're keep circulating around with this, the medium of signs, so that they look like protest signs often, right? But the language doesn't always give us an answer as quickly as protest signs do historically. So I think I have a question about that, if you wanted to talk more about your use of language and language within this idea of protests and signs. And then also I think that the move that you make between languages, between English and Cheyenne, between the different modalities in which you're kind of using that.
Yeah, I have a piece, it's very ironic, but one of my early word pieces was a painting on a wallboard, and I did in Philadelphia in like 1981, or maybe part of it was done in Oklahoma, but it's going to be shown at MoMA in the Judgment Midtown retrospective, which opens in October. And it's actually a kind of a fake glossary of Cheyenne and English. So I've been working with that kind of tension for a long time and almost like in a satirical, humorous way of what people look at and then what they think it is and what it really is. And so part of that is the ghosting I'm working with. You know, they see something, they don't know what that is. They see it faintly over here, and they don't know why they're seeing it faintly. But all those kinds of plays on power and language is the main thing about that. And it's very accessible, and that's why I use it. It's accessible, and you can't really deflect it so easily. And people like to deflect hard issues, difficult issues. They want to deflect it and dismiss it. But with the language, often it's in your head and in your system before you get a chance to deny it, you know. And then of course the public art pieces, the Native Host series goes on, and they become like authoritative messages to the public, you know, all over the world that I create. And then I flip the name around backwards. They don't know what that is. And they realize, oh, it's the state they live in, you know, or it's a province in Canada. And they realize, oh, we should look back beyond ourselves. So again, having those voices of either authoritative power or the one that kind of delineates power and the absence of power, those are important to me. And then also the poetics. I can't say enough about the poetics. I'm a colleague of David Byrne. I saw his Broadway show the other day, and we all danced to Psycho Killer in our studios, you know, when we were young artists in the East Coast. And so, you know, all this music. I just saw a concert 2 days ago of Elvis Costello. He came to Tulsa and went to the show, and all this great music, all this great poetry. You know, it's I'm really a student of that and a colleague of that. So beyond even the politicalness of it, just the power of that kind of pseudo punk rock or new wave music, and music has always been powerful for all the Native people. So we also follow that.
That's great. I have another one, Jennifer, if I can go.
Go ahead.
So one of the things that I think that it's hard to tell in the slideshow, and hopefully people here have seen your work in person, and Jennifer alluded to this in her first question, is of course you're taking this mode of language, you're making these prints, but the prints are so textured. I mean, you said your new prints, where your new embossings, which are so beautiful, and you're doing that technique to make it look like smoke across the page. But I thought your other prints too have they look like they have water droplets on them. They have this like amazing materiality. They're not flat, right? They ask to be read in all these different ways. And so do you want to talk more about the ways in which you're using the print medium in these unusual ways to bring in different elements with the language?
Yeah, that's a great observation. I always say, I'm just a painter. I'm a painter, so I'm going to paint. you know, even if it's with a sign, with ink, or with a press, or however, whatever kind of tool I've got. And so it's taken me a long time, I think like 20 years to get to this point of making those prints. But we're in a good vein of creativity right now to explore what we can do with that ink. And often printmakers ask me, how'd you make that? You know, that because I don't make it like a printmaker. I'm not worried about a bunch of technical borders. We just break them all down and make it all happen like a painter would. And so we're really happy about that. One of my printmakers, the one in LA, he told me one day he was just baffled by my technique. And he said, "Oh, you like the mistakes. That's what you like. You like mistakes." I said, "Yes, let's make mistakes. Let's make a bunch of mistakes." And that's the power of the beauty of having the medium lead you. See, a lot of artists make a big mistake where they pound the medium and they think if they can control it, they'll make it useful or powerful. No, you have to stay out of its way. Stay out of the medium's way, and it'll lead you somewhere you need to be. And so that's more like a painter working, you know, the drips and the smudges and the pores and all that kind of power of just creativity and exploration. And so I'm really happy about it. I'm going to do more, and we have, you know, good printmakers to help with that, and great paper. So it's really about how ethereal and how alchemical printmaking is to me. West painting, you know, painting is a mysterious practice, and so is printmaking if you kind of stay out of its way.
That's great.
Rachel, I just wanted to make sure that if students wanted to ask questions, they had time. And I know that we would have gone on a bit longer, but that Edgar Heap of Birds needs to go at a certain moment. Should we see if we can invite some questions?
Sure, that would be great. And I have to say, we have a really practical question already, which is the kind of question that I love too. It was about the embossed prints. And there's a question from Willa that asks if they were created in LA at Mccabe, the new works.
If they were created in LA? Is that the question?
Yes, the question is at the Mccabe, which must be, yeah.
No. But you can make a movie. It's just a matter of getting a good etching, like a laser etching, and actually my drawing was photoshopped a bit to make it less expressive, so that we could get a cut out of that magnesium. So you have to kind of be a little bit sparing on your expressive nature. You can't go crazy with it because you can't cut all those marks. So it's kind of a push and pull thing with the technique, but you can get it done anywhere pretty much.
Great, thank you. So I can keep asking questions, they're not coming in. I think that, you know, sometimes it's hard to type. I actually turned on my camera yesterday because I had a question and I couldn't bring myself to type into the Q&A, and I gave myself my backstage pass. But I mean, I think that one of the things is I was really struck with the new work too, is that now, I mean, the way that all the different ways you've played with language, the language on the signs, the language on the prints, the language, you know, all these things. And now language is actually like taking this new form, like it's kind of coming out of the paper and it's taking on this depth. So that perhaps doesn't lead exactly to a question, but what else are you most excited about that you're working on? Like, I love hearing your excitement about that process.
Another thing I can talk about is that I'm working with a group, they're called Backboard, and they found me, and they have a wonderful book. They have a big, thick book that they published, and they paint basketball courts. And there's an artist and his brother, and they go around the world and they make your art into a basketball court. And so I'm a big basketball fan. I'm at the University of Kansas. The Jayhawks just won, you know, the Final Four. I watched the Philadelphia 76ers play in Philadelphia when I went to Tyler. I'm a season ticket holder of the Oklahoma City Thunder. My daughter's been to every game this year. You know, my son has went many games. So anyway, they call me and they say, "Can we make your neuf painting into a basketball court?" And I said, "Yeah." And they want to make it by PS1. So we're going to make 2 basketball courts and then have the native host signs be the backboards too. So that's happening probably this summer, you know. So, and I never thought about making a basketball court, but they'll say go to that little purple shape and cut right, you know, and they'll patch the ball. So it's a really cool thing for kids to practice and play. And I'm going to see that in the next few months. I'm going to see the neuf painting become like terrain, become a surface to walk on.
That's amazing. So now we do have questions. And one is, how do you think about font when you make your text art? And the other one, I'm going to give you both of them just because I think it will give you more to chew on. Is it productive if a work causes a sensation, like the piece in Ohio or the works that were installed at the University of Illinois?
Oh yeah. You want to, well, that's what, I wrote a little essay called Puncture. I had a show at a gallery called K-Art in Buffalo. There's a really nice book we published. You can get from K-Art in Buffalo, and it's called Punctures. My wife Shanna wrote an essay about the work, and I wrote a piece about puncturing society. My family, my mother and father are going to Wichita to become aircraft factory workers, and so on. But yeah, you want to be provocative on certain levels. You want to be noteworthy, and you got to challenge with, particularly the public art. You want to be able to challenge the power. You can never overthrow it because you're not that strong, but you can certainly trip it. Trip it when it's running by. You put your foot out there and trip it really good. So what we want to do is send that out there and puncture society, and make people aware. And that's why the words are flipped. That kind of sets up a puncture with the native host signs. And those fonts are always sort of avant-garde bold, or certain kind of very, very standardized fonts that can be thought of as authoritarian, And then all the other work, my drawings, my prints with text, are very much my own gestural font. And so I like, and that's more like, it's like everything's open, everything's fair game, sort of with my prints and drawings. So the font isn't ever going to be something you can buy on Letraset or on Word program. It's always going to be something I make with my hand. And also, you might want to know, every print I make, I write backwards. So it's pretty hard. It's backwards with clear liquid on clear glass. That's how those prints are made.
Can you say more about, going back to the language question, which I really appreciated from Rachel, the choice of the 6 words, and it's a really interesting poetic form, and there's a nice rhythm to it. And when you look at a big wall of the panels, you also feel like you are allowed to read diagonally or vertically or horizontally, that there's a way that the mind wants to start to combine all these different groups of words together. I wonder if you can say more about the kind of composition of the works and how you decide how to lay them out, and why you chose that standard format for yourself.
Well, we had the first prints I made. I have some of those showing in New York in October, but they're actually the smaller prints. They're 15 by 22. They're half sheets, so they're more vertical. And when Michael, that was 20 years ago, when Michael gave me that opportunity, that's what we had to work with these vertical sheets. So I had 3 word phrases, and there was room for 2 of those sets of words. And then the 3 words, I look back on it, and I've thought about it many years, but it could be Heap of Birds, the sound of Heap of Birds. But I know that I'm very attracted to David Byrne's poetry and Fear of Music, all these things, Stop Making Sense, all these ways that he presented text. And I've just continued that kind of interest and the rhythm of it all, too. But I really hope that when I put something up there like that, that it's something that you can create your own interpretation and add a word to it if you see something in your life. That's why it's not a lot of a paragraph. It's very fragmented. So there's an entree for you to enter the discussion with your own mental language, too.
I've been really struck by how many openings, the kind of generosity of your work. It's this, even as you're talking about these incredible, like authoritative political structures, white terrorism, this, genocide, that there's this generosity of your work that's about openings, from the prints with what you call mistakes that of course are like these beautiful moments on the works, to the ways in which you use language. So I think that, and then of course the way that you're thinking about your practice is something that is going to lift up other people, right? Like you're going to redistribute wealth through it. This is not the way people talk about art. I have to say, it's such a pleasure to hear you talk about it. And we do have another question too about your use of kind of humor And they were talking about, particularly about Smile for Racism, which is extremely provocative. And it would be, of course, the person says they can imagine being surprised to see it, but it's hard also to kind of feel like it's funny, that it's this cartoonish, ironic, kind of painful, discomforting humor. So I think that, do you want to talk about your use of humor? And you said it yourself too. There's that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Humor. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to have a way to spin it and give it some bite so it's not repulsive too. You want to have people come into it, and of course the irony, the satire, all those kinds of things, but still having an edge. You're not being dismissive. You're going to have an edge about your idea, but it's poetics. I mean, that Smile for Racism. I was in New York City, like on 5th, 6th Avenue, whatever, somewhere in downtown, and I would finish breakfast and I walked out of the restaurant and the guy had a hat on with the Cleveland logo on it. And I grabbed the ticket from breakfast and I leaned on a post box, mailbox, and wrote Smile for Racism on the back of the ticket. I was just, at that moment, just shocked again by seeing it. It's so innocuous, but then so powerful, this kind of insulting, grimacing face, so again, it's the poetics of your life. You got to be available, to witness that. You got to be coming from somewhere that you care about that. So I was going back to Oklahoma, where there's real Indians. So it's not a theoretical discussion. There's real Indians here that don't like that, so that's where I come up with these impulses, I guess. There's reality of the community.
I think that we should let you go to view beauty and all of that. And I have to say that this too is I think the fact that you came here and did this with us while you were on your way to do that is another sign of your just true generosity. And I'm just really so grateful to you for coming.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to see your work again and to see you again.
Yeah. Yes. Next time, getting you back here in person. That's our trick.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Good night.
Okay. Bye.